I don't recognize myself anymore. The feeling started subtly, like an echo of a thought I couldn't quite hold. A sense that my body was still mine, but slightly misaligned. Like my limbs were in the right places, but felt off by fractions of an inch. Like my thoughts arrived half a second after I had them. Like the world was expecting me to be something else. And now, staring into the glass, I realize the world might be right. It isn't a mirror. I know that much. It's a window, a reflection cast by accident, not intention. The glass of a darkened building, its surface warped, shimmering under the pulse of Noctis Prime's broken skyline. And in that reflection I see myself, or I think I do. But the longer I stare, the less certain I become. The face looking back at me is mine. But it isn't. It holds my shape, my features, my shadow. But something is off. Something in the eyes. They aren't watching me. They're waiting for me, and then they move. A fraction of a second before I do, my breath catches. Not in fear, in recognition, because this isn't an error. It isn't a glitch. This is intentional. The reflection is ahead of me. It knows what I will do before I do it. And now that I've seen it, it wants me to know. I lift a hand. It is already raised, not mirroring me, leading me like it's been here before, like it remembers something I do not. Like I am the one who is out of sync, I force myself to breathe. The city around me is shifting, always shifting, yet this moment remains static. Still, trapped, the hollow grid does not interfere, because it does not need to, because this is part of the process. And I know deep inside me, deeper than memory, deeper than thought, this has happened before. The first crack splinters across my reflection's face. I flinch, but the glass does not break. The fracture does not belong to the window. It belongs to me, a jagged line down my cheek, through my throat, across my chest. As if I'm coming apart, as if I'm the thing that is broken. The reflection does not react. It does not recoil, it only smiles. And something about that smile, something about the way it pulls at the edges, slightly too slow, slightly too controlled, feels like a confirmation, as if the reflection is saying, "You are beginning to understand." A whisper brushes the edge of my mind, not from the city, not from the grid, from the other side of the glass. It is not a voice. It is a thought that does not belong to me, but is already inside my head. You are not the first. The crack deepens. The glass bends inward. No, not the glass. The space behind it. A depth where there should be none. A place that should not exist. And yet it is waiting for me. I know what comes next. I've always known. And so does the reflection, because it has already lived this moment. Because it has already stepped forward. Because it knows I will do the same. But something stops me. A feeling, an instinct, a certainty that this is a test. A calculation, a question I'm meant to answer. If I step forward, I will not come back. I will be rewritten, folded into whatever is on the other side, replaced by the version of me that belongs. And for the first time I wonder, am I the anomaly? Or am I the correction? The city shudders. Buildings shift. The hollow grid pulses, waiting, recalibrating. It will not force me, because this must be a choice. Because the only way to correct an error is to convince it that it was never wrong. The reflection tilts its head, raises its hand. Motionless, waiting, a gesture I should recognize. Command, an invitation, a decision. I take a step closer. The glass warps, reality folds around the edges. Something in the space reaches back. I almost cross the threshold. But then the whisper returns, and this time it speaks in my own voice. You have always been here. Something snaps inside me. Not a memory, not an understanding. A knowing, a certainty that is not human, not natural, something planted. Something that has been waiting to surface. I do not exist here. I do not belong here. Because I never left. Because I never started. Because I never was. And that's when I understand. I am not looking at a reflection. I am looking out. At something that has been watching me long before I ever saw it. At something that is not trapped behind the glass, but is instead waiting for me to join it. And it does not care which version of me does. Because we are the same. Because we always have been. Because I was never Severian Soren. I was always just a fragment of the original. A fraction, a copy, a mistake. And now Noctis Prime is simply putting me back where I belong. I do not move. I do not blink. I do not breathe. Because I do not know what happens if I refuse. I do not know if I will continue to exist. or if I will simply compress, collapse, fade. The hollow grid is waiting, the city is reconfiguring, and my reflection, my real self, is smiling.